Dark Satellite Media.
Katie slammed her door, fell on her bed. It was the way they said it, not what was said. Neither knew who or what their daughter really was. Katie texted Annie in need of a buzz. By 7:35, she was shotgunning Annie's truck, doing donuts in the dirt, neither giving a fuck. Annie lost control, spun the Ford into the creek. They laughed, Katie broke down and started to freak. Annie tossed her the vials, said, "Girl, let's fly out of here." They snorted every speck, made love, and the pain disappeared. And it's one way out. One way out. One way out. One way out.
Wow, there he is.
Hello.
Can you hear me? What's going on? Tommy, I'm Sam.
Hi, Sam.
And then you see Brian on top and Brian down there.
What's happening?
That makes it easier. Okay,
Yes.
Brian and Sam. All right.
Hey,
Tom, how are you?
I'm okay. You kind of seen what I look like after I perform, all wet.
So this, when we started the podcast, this is kind of like where we figured the finale would be. Like we figured this might be it's like, oh, one day if we ever get a chance to talk to I don't know, Tommy McLoughlin, we'll just quit doing shows. So this is,
I'll quit doing podcasts if you do that then.
yeah, but it's just such a treat for us. We talk music, we talk movies, and we invite guests. And lately we've just, reached out to a lot of the movie community, like Brian Usna, Steve DeJarnat. And
Wow.
yeah, man, a lot of stuff that we grew up. So thank you so much for your time.
Hey, my pleasure. I love to talk about what I love to do. So, I mean, it's
Yes.
definitely, the ego trip of all this stuff is I got a chance to do that and I got a chance to do that, but I still got 30 more years to do a
Hell
bunch
yeah.
of other shit.
Hell yeah.
Yeah,
I got to
man.
figure it out.
Well, to kick it off, I know you're doing something called Black Veil. So I think next week or in a week or two. So it's kind of like a 6-episode anthology, right? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, this was the brainchild of Dan Merrick, of obviously Blair Witch fame.
Yep.
And Dan is from Florida, and he always wanted to do kind of a Southern Gothic, either film or in this case series, and came up with the title Black Veil, and sort of in the kind of school of directors helping other directors in the horror genre, which tends to happen a lot. And I was very I had the benefit of Mick Garris helping me when did both the Amazing Stories series for Spielberg, and then also the others, where basically Steven kind of let us either write them or direct them, and he would make comments, and if there was anything to comment on. So it was great. So this again is one of those kinds of things where Jeffrey Reddick from the Final Destination was involved with is involved with this, a number of really great guys. And so we all basically had the kind of the marching orders to come up with about 20 minutes to a half-hour show that has something to do with that theme of Southern Gothic horror. And then if you can find some place to sneak in a woman with a black veil someplace in there, wherever you can think to kind of put it, just so we kind of have some sort of continuity of this presence. So for me, it was really interesting because, I've had a very split career in terms of the kinds of stuff I've been involved with, from obviously real monsters of the cinema, Freddy, Jason, Stephen King movie and stuff. And then I went off into the wonderful world of TV movies. And that was AIDS, global warming, segregation, mental illness, alcoholism. I mean, the real life.
Monsters.
Monsters. So when this came along, we were in the middle of obviously the whole pandemic thing, and also the Black Lives Matter, situation came up, and to go out and watch these protests again, and I'm going, holy shit, I thought we solved all this stuff back in the 60s. when we were maced and, beaten up for marching against the Vietnam War or for women's rights or black rights and all that stuff. But, here it was like, major deja vu. And since I had to do a horror thing and it had to be like Southern Gothic, I didn't want to just kind of do the, the cliche of the, the Southern guy that it's always felt like this and things. I thought it'd be more interesting to take it from the perspective of some young woman who's, says she's liberal, says she voted for Obama, but deep in her DNA, from grandfather to father and stuff, there is this racism, that exists. And she ends up having to go on a business trip down south. And I guess the best thing I can say is she sort of goes into the Twilight Zone.
Okay.
She's put into a situation where she has to make a choice. And of course, we're wondering which way she's going to go, figuring since it's a horror show, it's going to go.
Yes.
So yeah, and it kind of has all the Gothic, Southern Gothic things of the Spanish moss and the plantation houses and all that stuff kind of woven into it, but kind of from a today perspective of this young woman. And
is this going to be released like on a streaming site, or is that not figured out yet?
Yeah, I mean, these things are all being done, ultra low budget. So I'm of course having to, really kind of dig in there and say, okay, what exactly do I need shot wise and production wise, and what kind of actor and so on. So to keep the costs, everybody obviously has to do that. And then the hope is maybe, it'll be released as a long form thing of some sort. Maybe Shudder will pick it up, maybe in a perfect world, Netflix or something, but we're trying to make it, as, professional and, classy horror as we can. And then where it ends up going, who knows? I mean, this world has so changed with the way this is.
Oh yeah.
From where you started to like where it is now. I mean, it is kind of exciting though, because there are so many outlets. Like you said, there is a Shudder. There are places where these things can get that life. Like sometimes, like let's say this was a movie format, you would have like a week or two to get the audience's attention. And if it falls out of like the top 20, then it's like, all right, now you got to wait 2 years to rent it on VHS. And by then it's like you don't even remember, but
I mean, obviously I'm old enough to kind of watched all the things from starting on film and only talking about that's it, nothing's any good unless it's in the theater, to ways, the films come and go in a weekend and then suddenly have this other life on, remember Beta?
I do.
And then VHS, and then laser discs and DVD and Blu-ray and now streaming. So some of these things are still going strong. I mean, I've been to these VHS conventions where it's like there's still hardcore guys that say that's the only way to see Friday the 13th. Jason Lives. VHS, man, that's it.
You're looking at one over there. Look at his collection back there.
There you go.
I think I'm the only person that saw 5 functional VCRs in my house.
Oh wow, that's great.
Yes. If you ever need to borrow one, let us know. We'll mail you one.
Yeah. I had to find a Beta because I had all this great shit that I had on Beta, and finally found somebody in Florida that had a machine that, oh please, have it transport okay so it plays by the time it gets to California. And yeah, it did. So it's great to have that. My laser disc long died, somehow the rubber bands on those things never survive about 6 months or so, and then that was it on those.
I remember when like Laserdisc came out, it was like a thing for like a minute. I felt like it was like a minute. Like you would get like TV Guide and like everything cost like $100. But I remember as a kid, I would always take a pen because I was such a cinephile even back then. I would just circle either every album that I wanted in that TV Guide thing or every movie. I'm like, oh, I want Year of the Dragon. I want like fucking, One Dark Night or whatever the fuck it was, okay. Just out of curiosity, since this is like an anthology thing, and it could make it to a streaming site. Are you keeping up with anything like the new Creep Show, or are there any shows that you're a big fan of lately?
Well, again, it's that prejudice that I had from very early on that if you want to see a movie, you go to the movie theaters. If you want to see a horror movie or basically a genre movie of some sort, you fucking go Friday night with who I call the Yahoo crowd.
Yes, yes.
Us mud people, that were there to just, fucking entertain us,
Yes.
And it was so great. in the 70s and 80s, where the audience literally would talk to the screen, and you got this whole other experience, that it was like a ride, that you went on. So once the television thing started to become where I was, making shows, it was like, I don't even know what's on. I mean, one of the first shows I did was a miniseries for CBS called In a Child's Name, and I said, yeah, it stars Valerie Bertinelli, and I went, who? Eddie Van Halen's wife.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Should have just said that.
I mean, I was, completely out of the loop. And unfortunately, unless something comes along like The Haunting of Hill House or something that I was like, I got to see what this dude, because I love his work, did with this, then I'll watch it or binge it, depending. But a lot of the other things, it's so hard to keep up. I mean, there's so many shows, and you flip things on, you go, this is really good. I mean, they've taken an idea that would have made a cool 2-hour, 90-minute film, and they've stretched this thing for 10 hours. And there's so much other nuances and things that you could do, which is what's so great about kind of, where the TV movie and the miniseries have become these, 6 or 7 episode shows.
Is there any appeal to that? Like, let's pick One Dark Night. Could you make something like that into a 10 episode show?
That's a really good question, because I was approached just maybe 6-7 months ago by, and his name just went out of my head. He did the Sharknado.
Oh yeah. I know the guy. Yeah, because we were just talking about him. I think he did.
God damn it, and we've talked so many times, and I don't know why I'm just blanking at the moment, because I keep having all these other names pop up. Anyway, he contacted me, and he asked me that same question because he found the company that, still has the rights for it. And he said, is there any way we could stretch this thing? And so I started kind of working on, how I could break it down, because I did actually reinvent the movie at a certain point. And if you've seen it, it sort of starts where you don't really know who our villain is. He's been entombed, and then eventually come about, an hour and 15 minutes into the movie, he finally comes out, and, we see him. But I thought, well, what if I went back and literally set him up? So the first half hour was really meeting Raymar, saw what he did to these women, saw how he had this magic, this professional show that he would put on. And people thought, man, this guy is like the best magician we've ever seen. I mean, he literally can levitate people in the audience. And, so I kind of wanted to take it from that perspective. Then, like the half hour mark or so, he dies. And then we go on to, his daughter, who gets involved with, once he's dead, and the girls from the high school and all that. So, I'd already had that. And I thought, well, maybe I can incorporate, both of these into this. And then it, like everything else since the pandemic, it's sort of like, well, yeah, let's get back and we'll talk about it. And everybody kind of goes off in their different directions. So it's still kind of sitting there in the script. I'm still kind of, working through.
Yeah.
But the Friday the 13th sequel that I wanted to do sort of took precedent when I thought the rights were going to get resolved, which still hasn't happened. So
it still hasn't, right? Yeah, we were talking about that earlier. Like it's
9 years, boys. 9 years. This shit's been going on. Unbelievable.
Is it Anthony Ferrante? Was that the guy you were thinking?
That's it. There you go. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Going back, I just had a curiosity, because I mean, you said you remember going to the theaters, and I'm always a movie guy. Like for me, like I'll go Saturday, like after, before everything, I would go Saturday afternoon, and I would I just love watching movies by myself, usually at the best time. What was like some of the wildest, like what was like a wild time in the 70s, or a movie that you watched in the movie theaters that kind of like inspired you, or like a wild
real simple answer on that, Sam? The Exorcist.
Okay.
I was one of the fortunate that was able to see it in that first week, at the National Theater out in Westwood. And I had not heard anything about it other than I was at a post-Christmas party, because I guess it opened Christmas Day or the day after Christmas, if I recall. And I saw this friend of mine that I'd known for years, and he looked like hell. And I said, what's going on? He says, Tommy, I haven't slept in 3 days. And what happened? And he said, The Exorcist. And my friend Mike Haas and I, who Mark collaborated with me on One Dark Night, looked at each other and said, all right, let's find out. Where's the paper? Got to find the showtime. So we were in that long line of people out there, and there was Blatty, there was Friedkin passing coffee out, an ambulance, all these things, that you go, this is really weird event. But then seeing it with an audience, and I ended up seeing it, I don't know, 3-4 times. I mean, it became like, I got to see if people are still reacting like this. And, to see people pass out, to see people run up the aisle with their hands over their mouth about to throw up, to see at the end of the film, when the credits are rolling, people would stand up to go and they put like one arm in their coat and then like stop and just keep staring at the screen and not move. I mean, it was like, it shocked people like I'd never seen, before or since.
Oh, that's such a
that whole period was
such
just
a good answer.
Unbelievable. So still to this day, it's really hard to say anything else ever topped, that thing. Closest thing was Carrie, the end of Carrie. That certainly, they went through all the way to the roof on that jump. And Jaws, of course, was the first of the big, blockbuster.
But even before that,
went.
Even before,
Sorry?
I said even before that. So like, what was the effect? Do you remember? I'm trying to guess, just how far back you go, but like Night of the Living Dead. So that was like 68, 69. Like, what was that experience like?
That was great because we felt like we really were the unwashed and the freaks that we were out there watching this, black and white. I mean, it really felt like documentary. It really felt that whoever made this really was kind of twisted, and we felt weird. Eraserhead had that same quality. You're seeing it at midnight, and come about 1:30 in the morning, where you're sort of in that twilight state of mind, and those images, with both of those movies, just sort of got into your subconscious. So there was, a bunch of us, then you kind of always saw the same people, at these things you would run into, who would go and bring somebody else. And they usually were late night, experiences, which made, those kinds of movies all the more special. But yeah, no, I mean, as a child, I was fortunate that all the Universal horror movies would be played on the local TV station 5 times a week, 9 o'clock, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. You could see Frankenstein or Dracula or The Wolf. So of course, by the end of each week, you knew all the dialogue, you were drawing the monsters. So that was like kind of the first big, introduction into that. And then when I started skipping school and going to the movies at noon, it was all the Hammer horror movies, all the Roger Corman, Edgar Allan Poe movies. So, that was the next big influence. And I don't think anything really was the thing that really jumped out as huge, classy thing until Rosemary's Baby came along. And that was like, wow, mainstream horror, God's dead, long live Satan, all this stuff that growing up Catholic was like, oh my God, that's whoa. And then of course The Exorcist, tops that. And then of course Omen comes along. I mean, there was that whole
and your shirt. Speaking of midnight movies.
Oh yeah, Jodorowsky.
Yeah.
He was I was very fortunate again with him. I have this sort of Forrest Gump existence where somehow I end up at the right place at the right time. I went and saw Holy Mountain, and I went back to see him, or went down stage to see him. I told him that I'd studied with Marcel Marceau as he did, and he goes, "Oh, really?" And I said, "Yeah, I've got a mime students. I don't know. Would you come and talk to us?" He said, "No, I don't do that anymore." And then, but give me your address. When you do it, okay. I probably won't, but he shows up. For 3 hours, Jodorowsky's in my apartment showing us all these, because he was the one that invented the whole like wall illusion, which Marceau, bought from him. And he suddenly shifted gears, and he wasn't a filmmaker. He was this incredibly poetic mind. Jacques Tati did the same thing. I just had the balls to go up and say, would you come and talk to us? And, it's like these legendary people. It was just amazing. And of course, since that time, all Jodorowsky's movies to me are just the ultimate weird dream, surreal,
super weird,
life and magic and all that. So
that's so cool. And I love the shirt. It's like in the Judas Priest font.
Priest, yeah.
Yeah, I know.
So, and because for a minute I thought it was Priest, but like I'm gonna just switch gears for a minute there, because we're all musicians, all three of us. I still play music. Brian still plays music.
Oh, great.
You still play music. So I think the story of the Sloths is pretty amazing, because I didn't know that it went back so far.
Yeah.
But you weren't in that. Just explain what it is so everyone knows.
Yeah, well, I was the kid who wanted to be the filmmaker. My father was a USC film student. So when he graduated in 49, nobody would hire a film student. It was like you had to know somebody in the business. You had to, be relatives or something. So basically he bought a house next to the old MGM backlots in Culver City. And I grew up and basically inherited his dream. He always was talking to me about films and stuff. He had a 16 millimeter camera from USC. Of course, I couldn't afford that. So we got an 8 millimeter, and I had the backlots of MGM to play on as a kid. So I would go in there with my 8 millimeter camera and my friends, and we would make these little movies on the backlot on the weekends. They were terrible. We were terrible, but we had this, great art direction behind us, great production design, with these amazing sets and stuff. And during that time, my dad and I really kind of bonded. Then about 62, the Beatles hit. And suddenly the gears shifted, like, wait a minute, girls like guys with hair, we're going to start doing this, guys. And, we put together a band, and, I got kicked out of 7 high schools because I wouldn't cut my hair.
I got kicked out of high school too.
Yeah. Father was going to disown me at that point, but it was suddenly, obviously the Beatles, the Stones, the Kinks, Animals. We opened for the Doors 3-4 times here in LA. And we were 15, 16-year-old kids.
Yeah.
So it was, if you watch the Monterey Pop Festival, you'll see me about 5 times, in the audience, like, stoned out of my gourd.
Yeah.
Just Hendrix, Janis, The Who. To be there again, Forrest Gump, happened to be there, and that was it. I was rock and roll. That was going to be, my life. And so we played up and down the Strip, and eventually there was like a couple of versions of the Sloths that kind of fell apart. One guy's parents said, no, you're going to be a lawyer, out of the band, and so he went back to school, and then he formed another band called the Maywines. I joined that. The other Sloths ended up joining that. We kind of get the same song.
Is he a lawyer though?
Yes, he is.
All right. We'll give him a pass.
But when everything sort of fell apart in '69, combination of Manson in this town, where we couldn't even go into restaurants without being told, you hippie killer, out.
Holy shit. Yeah.
It was intense. It really was. Not getting served. Somebody pull up in front of you, or if you're on a curb, roll down their window, hey, and get spit. It was real. So you sort of started to feel like, okay, I'm going to protest all the people that are getting put down, because, we all felt we were in that category too. Just
absolutely
having long hair, you were a freak.
Yeah.
So I wanted to be a more visual lead singer. And that's what kind of led me to study mime. So I ended up leaving the country in 69, 70, and went to Paris to study, figuring I would now be able to do stuff that James Brown wasn't doing, that Mick Jagger wasn't doing, that Roger Daltrey wasn't doing. Is going to have a whole new sense of physical, performing. But I fell in love with the comedy and kind of went, I'd much rather do comedy and do this, and make movies like Jacques Tati or Keaton, Buster Keaton and stuff.
Yeah.
And that, is sort of that thing of, one thing led to another. And then I'm in the Screen Actors Guild, and Woody Allen hires me for Sleeper to work with him on the robot, cut characters in that. And then it was like one monster after another, the Jabberwocky and Alice in Wonderland, the mutated bear in Frankenheimer's Prophecy, Captain Star in Walt Disney's Black Hole. So they were day gigs.
That was big. That was big for me. I used to have like the Black Hole books. Like when I was a kid, I had those fucking books. And like when I was like, obviously, we got to know what we're talking about, if we're going to talk to Tom. And when I realized that you were in that, like, I had that book as a kid and I loved it. So cool.
I think I had action figures of that.
Oh, yeah. I know. I'm still looking for those suckers,
Wow,
I got a school book folder that has Captain Star on it, and I thought that was great, that there's some kid out there that's taking that to school, that something that they let me create that character. That wasn't in the script. They basically said, we want to come up with something for you to do, because I was just hired to choreograph the humanoids and the robots and do some of the stunt stuff, and then that character, it was something that Gary Nelson, the director, said, yeah, we're going to, come up with something for you. So that, was great, thrill. But as we were making it, guys, we were going, they should have said yes to George years ago when he came with that thing called Star Wars, but they didn't, and now they're trying to catch up, and this is just not Star Wars, and yet as the years have gone on, it's had its own kind of cult following enough.
Oh yeah.
People saw it young enough that it was like, it worked. But those of us who were like, Star Wars people, it's like, come on, this isn't Star Wars. Come on, guys.
Yeah.
But, I'm happy that it's had the kind of success, and they keep doing interviews telling me, oh, no, they're going to do it. They're going to redo it. And, we'd love to hear from people who were there, for the original. But, I've yet to hear a green light on it.
Listen, what an amazing life so far. I can't,
Yeah.
What a trip. And just out of curiosity, to kind of like switch gears a little bit, you talked about what it was like to be kind of, a long haired or whatever, obviously, like what would be like when we were punk rockers, now.
Mhm.
So like the Tarantino movie, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, what did you think of that portrayal?
He did a really good job. I was sad that the Aquarius Theater that they painted up to look exactly like it looked back in the day never even made it into the movie, but it's still all painted up there on Sunset Boulevard. And that, I'd seen that because I was living in Hollywood at that time, was, very exciting. Also to see the movie at the Cinerama Dome and the shot where they drove by it. I mean, the whole audience, first time in a long time I heard people react. It's like, there's where we are right now. That was great.
Yeah.
But just in general, yeah, he really caught that whole crazy thing with the Manson, family, and just the whole kind of vibe of that period. And it was fun. To me, it was, I love Quentin's work. He's such a cinephile, and everything you see, you can go, I know where you got that. And he goes, yep. How about that? I know that's, yep.
You're right. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
When I met him for the first time, I was at one of these Masters of Horror dinners that Mick Garris.
Mick Garris does those. Yeah, hell yeah.
Yeah. So Quentin sat next to me, and he literally pitched me the whole Grindhouse movie that, eventually,
yes,
that got made, Planet Terror and whatever the name of it was.
Death Proof.
Yes, yeah. And with all these other things that he was going to do that were going to be like other trailers besides, the Machete and some of the ones that actually did make ton of stuff. And then at the end of the evening, he was leaving, and he had that one of those incredible cars that he has. It wasn't the Pussy Mobile, Pussy Wagon.
Yeah.
But he was driving down the alley as I was heading my car, and suddenly he backs up and he goes, Tom McLoughlin, One Dark Night, Thorny Am I, 1980. I mean, he raveled this shit off like he had a Rolodex, and I went, all those years in the video store. He goes, yep. And he says, I love your shit. And I also love that TV movie you did on this. And I mean, he knew all of this crap, and I went, this is an amazing guy, that knows that much about movies, even us little hackers that were, somehow making films and, always looking up to these guys going, yeah, I'd love to make one like, Spielberg did or whatever.
Working in a video store will do that. Like I mentioned in our last episode, that was like growing up, like that was the measurement. Like you either worked at a record store or a video store, and you thought that was like the best. I was like, oh, this is the best job ever. I don't know why anybody else would not want to do this. I want to switch gears to Mick Garris, who is a legend. I love Mick Garris, everything he does. I love his podcast. So amazing stories, like Go to the Head of the Class, like that episode. Holy shit. Like that episode, I never saw it until recently, like that one. And I remember the show. We all remember the show, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That, I mean, you, Bob Gale, Mick Garris, like, what do you remember about just that, making that with Christopher Lloyd, Rob Zemeckis directing? Like, you want to talk about movie magic in 50 minutes? That was like loaded with movie magic in those 50 minutes. Just like, what do you remember of that episode?
Well, yeah, Mick had a really great early career in that he did publicity, for Universal. So he was able to talk to all these legendary directors, about their movies, do the making of kinds of things. So he had all these relationships that, he had from early on. And he's got, a great, wonderfully warm personality. People love him. The name of his company is Nice Guy Productions, because that's exactly what he wants to put out there. And I had a screening at, ironically, at UCLA with the Academy of Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Horror of One Dark Night. And afterwards, Mick comes over to me and he just kind of gushes on about how much he loved it. And, he's going to be directing himself, soon. And, we just kind of bonded. And it was almost like brothers. I mean, we have a somewhat similar look. And, we would hang out together and it's like, yeah, you guys brothers? It's like, no, but, close. And as time went on, we, would kind of jump on each other's projects. And it was more me being able to jump onto his because he had connections like, Spielberg and those guys. So, yeah, he asked me about, if I was interested in writing, a couple of amazing stories with him. And of course, yeah. So we sat down and, kind of took this idea that I thought was, great and tried to put, and if you know my style, it's all about Gothic horror. I can't seem to shake the Universal and Hammer and all those influences from the early days. So they're all in there, which carry on even to this next thing I'm doing next month. But so we did everything we could to make it as great as possible. We didn't know who was going to direct it at that time, and then of course I wasn't on the set. I don't know if Nick was at all that got any kind of preview to what was to come. But when we saw the first cut, it was like, did we write that? I mean, Zemeckis and obviously Christopher Lloyd, they just took it to another stratosphere. It was just everything you wanted and more,
The effects of the head, like everything about it was just like, I remember the ending, when it first aired, because I knew how it ended when I saw like the stitches. But I was like, man, let me just rewatch this. And when I rewatched it, like it was like I rewatched it for the first time. It was just so, I loved Amazing Stories. I know they kind of like redid it recently for Apple TV, but like just those earlier episodes from like 85, 86, I don't even remember, probably something like that.
Did you guys see any of the others when that was on, the other Spielberg thing that was on NBC for, I guess, a season maybe?
Do you remember what year? No.
When was that? 90.
Oh, okay.
Damn. Let's see, my daughter was already born. Trying to figure it out for my kids. I think it was like maybe somewhere in the mid 90s, maybe. And it was, NBC had two shows, the others and the one with the kids that was really great. Who was the actress? I'm blanking on her name, and I had worked with her too. So happens when you get old, guys. First thing to go is the mind.
We're right behind.
Cardellini.
Yeah.
James Franco.
Freaks and Geeks.
Freaks,
yes,
yeah.
Freaks and Geeks. So Freaks and Geeks and others were the two sort of like everybody who was cool loved. Somehow NBC couldn't get an audience, and both of those things got dropped.
Apatow.
And then, of course, later, The Others, the movie came out. So the whole title, even The Others, sort of like, oh, that's the, no, the TV show. There was a TV show? Yeah, it was great. And Stephen had, my regular DP, Shelley Johnson, was the DP on it. And he's like a chameleon. He could take every director and what do you want? Okay, I'll give it to you that way. So each episode had its own feeling and flavor, based on who was directing it. And it was all kind of these, psychic people that got together and they would solve crimes and mysteries and stuff. Each one had a special gift, and you went into the supernatural world. But that's another one that I don't know where who owns that or what's happened to that, because I think there's at least 10 episodes or so of those.
I love any anthology. Like like we all grew up on Tales from the Crypt, and then later on Mick did Masters of Horror. Even if it was only 2 seasons, but just the idea, even with what you're doing now, it's the same thing. Like you're with Black Veil, it's like do you guys have questions, right? So, Brian?
Yeah. Well, yeah, and going back to One Dark Night, which I've been a huge fan of since growing up. And I love the climax of that film. I love the special effects, the zombies, the creature. Was it true? You read all these things. Did you import skeletons or real? Is that accurate?
What's accurate is, yes, those are real skeletons in there.
Yeah.
Didn't have to import them. They were not that hard to get in those days.
Okay.
And Tom Berman, who did all the
guy.
makeups, stuff, you had to base that stuff on something. And if you basically were going to do, bone figures and with a little bit of skin and stuff, you don't need to cast a person. You get a skeleton and start adding shit on. And so that, all that stuff was, definitely real. And he just did, and I said, I just want to, all kinds of humanity there, an elderly Black man, a child, obese man, an old woman, and then like the one he came up with, I thought was so great was the war veteran who had had half his face blown off, so he had like a wax side of what his face, when it was normal, kind of looked like it all matched. But now that he was down there, all of this had rotted. And yet there's this nice wax thing, which the girl ends up putting her hand on and, knocking it off. So you get the whole gory corpse thing. So yeah, all of that stuff, was like a wonderful marriage between, him and me, with trying to come up with something that we wanted to just make a real good old time scare house type thing. And because after 4 years of trying to sell it, we ended up getting a group of Mormon investors who needed to lose $800,000 in the next 3 weeks. Can you start shooting? And I went, yep. I was all storyboard. I was ready to go after 4 years. So, we did this thing, made the movie. They showed it kind of pieced together in the Philippines, got their tax shelter, gave it back. We finished the movie. Somebody took over that company. They came in, recut it. Then I came back and said, well, we got to fix the ending. You fucked up the end, So it was this whole kind of battle. And then we go and we get a PG. And I'm going, I don't want a fucking PG. It's that's like a baby movie,
Fuck
like
no, we don't want a PG. Yeah.
The motion picture rating board goes, well, you had no sex. And I went, yeah, it's true. You didn't have any profanity. Yeah, the Mormons made me take that out. I said, but we got dope smoking. I mean, that doesn't bother. Yeah, that's okay.
That's not worth something.
Slasher movie. They hated the slasher movies. That was the thing. So we were sort of this refreshing change, and they gave us the PG. So I thought we were cursed. But flip side was all these parents and grandparents took their kids and grandkids to go see it. It can't be that bad. It's PG. So, they're watching this thing, and then you hit that certain mark where the corpses start coming out. It scared the bejesus out of these children. And, as the years have gone on, it goes, you motherfucker, how you scared the shit out of me. But, I'm a producer now, so it all kind of worked out that I realized, this is the kind of thing I want to do too. But it was such a weird thing that so many people saw it so young. And that, you wouldn't thought, I would never would have thought that could have happened.
It'll make an impression if you watch something young. Like man, we were talking, I always bring up Miracle Mile with Steve DeJarnett. I was like, the movie you made, I watched when I was 10 and you ruined my life. Like, I got to think about nuclear bombs now at 10. Like he laughed. I'm like, this movie like fucked me up. What's funny? We're talking. And as I look over at my messenger, Mick Garris just sent me a message.
Oh yeah.
I was like, I'm talking to Tommy right now. So that's pretty cool. Parker, did you want to, I know you got a shitload of stuff.
Just real quick on One Dark Night. I'm a huge, old school Batman fan. So I was just wondering, you have to have a good Adam West story, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that really was an interesting thing because, I was just looking for a guy to play, the husband, then you throw a stick, towards Malibu here, you're going to hit a million of these guys. And the casting director, because we had no time, said, what do you think about Adam West? And I went, you're talking about Batman? And he goes, yeah. And I said, oh, wow, really? We could get him? She goes, are you kidding? Nobody wants this guy. He's Batman. It was like the same thing with George Reeves, and he was Superman. He couldn't lose that. I said, no, fuck those guys. Batman comes in the movie, Now, what I didn't realize is when Adam acts, he likes to start his voice down here and then make it go up a little bit because, Tom, I think it's far more interesting to hear your voice go up and down like this. So I had to try to get that out of him, So after every take, Adam, can we just, I know people say something about that. I just think it's more interesting, don't you? It's interesting, but yeah, I think for me, it just sounds, to me, it's Batman, and all right. So I managed to get all that out. Well, when the person who took over the movie later did looping, Adam came in and he did it all over again. So when you hear the movie today, you will still hear some of that down, in and out through the movie. But he couldn't have been a nicer guy. He really was funny. Really dark sense of humor. I don't think it was one of the movies he was terribly proud of because he really wasn't the star or anything. It was just a role that he did.
Yeah.
But I just as the years went on and the more sort of notoriety he got again, I was really happy for him. And when he passed on here in Los Angeles, I don't know if you know, but they took the bat symbol and they had it projected up on the city hall, and just to see that building and the bat sign up there for Adam was just incredible. I mean, that was just like magic.
It's awesome.
Have you lived in LA or in California like most of your life?
Yeah. I just, born in Santa Monica, raised in Culver City in the backlots. Grew up, when I left home at 15, I left home to Hollywood. So, it was, and of course, those were when I had the band days, in the 60s. And that's where all the clubs were and everything that we were playing in. And then, short year in Paris. And then the only time I've kind of gone other places is all the movies ended up taking me places that always would end up coming back here. And it's not that I think this is the greatest place in the world. I go to other towns, small towns, and go, this is great. This is life. This is people care about each other. We're not all in cars all the time and distancing and things. And, but it's home, it's sort of, it's what you know. So, I've stayed here.
Well, I know that you, I think you wrote the script for One Dark Night and Friday the 13th in the same cemetery, which I'm going to get to. But I also wanted to bring up Freddy's Nightmares because you did one of the episodes, and I loved it because it had John Cameron Mitchell, who later went on to be Hedwig and the Angry Inch. Man, what a trip. I had no idea.
I know.
And then I watched it.
Nor did I.
Yeah. So what do you remember about making that episode?
Another Mick Garris blessing in my life. He was, involved with that, and he had done. Had he done his? I guess he did his episode already, and Toby Hooper had done one.
Yeah.
And so they asked me to do it, and it was for New Line, and Bob Shea was, kind of in it, but their whole concept was we're going to do an hour show, but you could split it in half, and these episodes would work as two separate pieces. So we actually would have double the amount, of shows if they wanted to get it syndicated. So the tough thing was trying to get, these stories to sort of end at the half-hour mark and then pick up. So if you hadn't seen that first half, you still could sort of follow the next one. And if you see them together, the characters, overlap. So the first half of it was pretty well scripted. And I thought, okay, second half wasn't. So there was so much improvisation that I was doing on the set, coming up with stuff, and I just went, well, this is where I guess, Jodorowsky and all the surrealism aspects I kind of threw into that.
That's an interesting point, because I could really see it in that, now that you mention it, in that episode for sure, especially that first half. I get it, Nightmares is supposed to be like a dream sequence anyway, but the first half of that with his parents, his mom is like in a fucking fridge, like it's such a trip, like it was so. And then you had Lar Park from Friday the 13th Part 7.
Yeah, and she was great. My ex-wife was in there as the wacky nurse. It was a lot of fun to do. And Michael DeLuca, who obviously went on to be, a huge industry person, at that time, I think he was 26 or 27. And I think he was the one who brought Bob Shea the whole notion of Ninja Turtles. So it's like, as far as Bob was concerned, DeLuca had his pulse on the American youth and to listen to him. So, he wrote that script, but as I said, it was like he wrote half of it, and the other half he wasn't quite sure what to do with it. So as I said, on the set, we played with it, and he was very cool with all that. But it was kind of that crazy, shoot it on 16 millimeter, long days, just craziness to get those things done. But I do look at it as, one of my favorite, just bizarre, comic, dark, surreal, offbeat, what the hell is this doing on television kind of things. But,
Yes.
it was a lot of fun.
Hey, listen, 11 p.m. Channel 9, shit gets crazy.
Oh yeah.
And real quick, also, like the Friday the 13th series, I thought was a lot of fun too. I feel like it's one of those series that maybe gets overlooked a lot. I don't really know if it's available anywhere. I was.
Oh yeah, no, yeah. There's a whole box set that came out on those, and the same thing with She-Wolf of London that also Mick and I were involved with, and a lot of these things, it's not kind of what you put at the top of your resume, but you find as the years go on, it's like, oh, I love that. Yeah, I watched that. Parents would go to sleep, and I'd get up and I'd watch the stuff, and it's stuff you don't expect, because you're in your 20s or 30s and you're thinking, okay, I'll do the best I can with this. And all the good stuff was done in the 70s, and we're all bullshitting here in the 80s with the stuff we're doing. Now it's like, oh, you made 80s horror. That's great. And I go, all right, okay. But at the time, man, I mean, I thought my Friday the 13th was going to live and die in a weekend. I thought the fans are going to be pissed because I put comedy in it. Didn't know, but I couldn't do a part 6 of a franchise without having some tongue-in-cheek, some sense of satire in the midst of the whole thing.
Let's talk about
Paramount let me.
Let's talk about your masterpiece, which I think is Friday. Like this is like I always go back and forth between 4 and 6. I think 4 and 6 are the best for sure.
Agreed.
And before we get into it, I just want to ask you one quick question.
Sure.
What was the craziest show you ever saw, a band from way back? Let's say the 70s. Did you ever see the Doors? Oh no, you played with the Doors.
Yeah, we toured. Yeah. No, I got some Doors stories that no one else knows, because nobody else was in the house that night, and shit that Jim did, and just stuff that he would say backstage and things, because he was, whatever you saw in the movie The Doors, was like just a tiny tip of the iceberg of how crazy, and again, it was all drugs and alcohol and stuff. So I never felt I got to know Jim, and I was hoping Oliver Stone would make it, so that, okay, now we see the man behind all that. But supposedly the family said no to anything that was true, whatever that truth was. So we never found out. But just in terms of like show, what was the craziest thing?
Yeah, just give me like a memorable show that you remember that like of a band that kind of blew you away.
Okay, again, real simple. Jimi Hendrix, Monterey Pop.
Wow.
We were, my best friend at that time was Chris Mancini, Henry Mancini's son.
Oh yeah.
We made a band when we were like 14. We would rehearse in Henry Mancini's garage. Hank came to us one day and said, boys, I normally go to the Monterey Jazz Festival every year. This year they're having some sort of pop thing. Maybe you guys would like to go. Front row center. Yeah, I mean, there was the press in front of us, but we were literally, these two stone dudes, 16 years old, front row center for Monterey Pop. And of course, everything was one mind-blowing act after another. And all these, from Lou Rawls to Ravi Shankar to The Who, but Hendrix, there was something that happened, and the St. Janis too, there was something that just electrified the crowd. And it was Hendrix that I went, I don't know how I'm ever going to do that, but I got to do something in that school. That was fucking amazing. And I followed him like an apostle. Every show, San Diego, San Francisco, anything here, opening for the Monkees, wherever he was, it was like we were there. And so that was just, that first time seeing him.
I don't think anyone's topping that. But
no.
Yeah, we don't want to take up too much of your time. So if we could just talk about Friday the 13th part 6 real quick. It's just
okay.
Wow, what a movie. I mean, Parker, kick it off. Give him something. Ask him something good.
Not only is it my favorite of the series, but it's actually in my top 10 movies of all time.
Really? Holy shit.
So this is a huge treat for me. You're actually the second director out of my top 10 movies of all time that I've ever met. Red Dawn, the original Red Dawn, I met that director, John Milius.
Yes.
And very, very nice guy.
Yeah, great guy. Yeah.
But I mean, my God, I celebrate this movie all day. I mean, I literally watched it, a few hours ago, and talking about bands, when I was touring in a band, this was the only one that the five guys agreed on. We got to watch part 6. We got to watch part 6 to the point that the card game that they actually play in part 6, we actually turned it into a drinking game, funny enough. And, you would take a deck of cards and make different cabins, and when you would find the Joker, that would be Jason, right. And then that guy had to drink all the beers and he wouldn't even make it stage that night.
That's the best story I've ever heard. That's great. That's great.
But I mean, some of the kills in this movie were probably some of the best in the franchise. I mean, out of this one, Sheriff Garris is my all-time. I mean, that bend over, how they did the effects, how pretty much this guy literally breaks his back in half, I thought was amazing. Thanks. Do you have any stories as far as doing that? Watching that?
I'm glad you brought that one up, because we had 9 screenings with the motion picture rating board, and they kept giving us an X. And I thought my stuff, I did 2 things morally. One, I didn't just want to slash up women through this movie. I didn't think that was right. And I didn't think that's what this, the genre should be about or celebrated. So I wanted obviously to have equal amount of guys as women. Secondly, I wanted to make sure that every kill was beyond anything a human being can do. You cannot punch somebody's heart out. You cannot twist a head and tear it off, nor can you sit there and bend somebody all the way back. And all the gore elements that they took out, like when the cop's head was squished and you saw a bit of the brain or the skull open and a piece of brain, that got cut. The triple decapitation, actually seeing those 3 heads go and go down, was an incredible effect. That unfortunately they cut that out. But the thing that they picked on every single one of those screenings was that back bend. And I'm going, what the fuck? There's not a drop of blood. There's, what is the problem? It's cumulative. What? It's cumulative. By this point, you're on to like the 13th, 14th kill, and like enough already, So we had one more back and forth between Jason pushing and him getting, which we ended up doing it in frames, taking out little. But that was like the final thing. When we finally got past that on the 9th screening, then the movie got an R. But yeah, who would have thought that? But in the theater, when I would see it, it did have that sort of, oh God, in a way that I thought, who needs blood? I mean, if you can give them something that just bothers the shit out of them like that, but where I stole it from myself. I wrote a sketch called The Chiropractor that for Dick Van Dyke on the Van Dyke and Company show in the 70s. And Tommy Smothers played the chiropractor. My first ex-wife played the assistant, and it was like Dick going to a chiropractor, and they did all these bizarre things. And one of them was literally, he falls off the table and they take his head and his legs. And well, that could be interesting if Jason did that to the guy. And, all it is a guy with, his legs out down in a hole, and the sheriff also in the hole going the other way. And, it's a very basic old school illusion. Didn't take, no visual effects, nothing. It was just all done right there in camera. But it was amazing how that really stuck with people.
It was the best I think kill.
Too that,
he
was trying to save his daughter. I mean, I tried to put a lot of elements, hopefully, that you cared about these people. I hated that in so many of the movies, you just sit there and kill the bitch, kill that motherfucking bitch, and I thought, that's not what this should be. It should be, oh no, I liked her, shit, they killed Sissy, oh fuck them, and so there's at least some sort of involving emotionally, and to try to have an arc that happened with Jason. He was happy being dead. He didn't need Tommy Jarvis to come and bring him back, so his agenda was, I'm going to get this punk, and anybody in my way goes down. Tommy had to see that he was dead, burn the body, ends up bringing him back. So he's got to spend the rest of the movie, how the hell do I stop this? Until he comes up with the old, they moved the tombstones, but they didn't move the bodies, put the body back where it died. Then the curse is over, so I just grabbed onto that old, horror thing. But at least it felt like it was going somewhere, and it wasn't just waiting for the next person to get killed,
It's
who many of them you didn't like.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because I was going to ask you about the casting. A lot of times, casting. I mean, shit. I think casting could really make or break a movie. Sometimes you see.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna just mention the remake of Friday the 13th. Listen, I just thought the casting wasn't, like, it took me out of the movie, that casting in particular. But this one, somehow, like, you pick people that just kind of worked. I don't know what it was, like this cast, the cast in part 4, the cast in part 2. Wow, yeah. So all the even ones, 2, 4, and 6. Really, I like those casts. So how do you go about just like getting a cast? Like, was it a happy accident, or do you have a formula?
Well, the formula is kind of, for one, it helps being an actor and knowing that kind of the sensitivity level, and also being smart enough to know that if an actor's like just looked at this part and really thought about it and brought a bit of themselves into it, you cannot direct that. I can't put in what God's left out. If they've got some quality, you go, that's it. When Tom Matthews walked in, I went, that's the guy. The same thing with Jennifer Cook. And when Tom Fridley came in, he just had me hysterical. And I thought, that's Court. And so certain people come in and you go, that's it. Now I just got to get them to feel free with the dialogue, so that it seems like it's coming out of them. And if there's something comes up, like with Tom Fridley, where I said, tell these guys some story about the rocks, and Tom just, improvised that. And I meant, that's it, cut. And he's still that way. 35 years later, Tom Fridley is that same kid today, same wacky energy, same, you just want to hug him because he's just so wonderful and warm. And that's another thing that happened. We've all stayed friends, all of us. I mean, we still, we're Facebook friends. We see each other at the conventions. There's such a wonderful bonding that happened. And I think a lot of it, I was just very lucky. I chose a bunch of people that really, were those people in terms of that likability quality that they had. And I tried very much to make every movie I do to have some reason. And I learned this from Frank Capra, that it's a people to people medium. If we like them, somehow we'll go on these, adventures. If we're going, I don't care. It's like, get rid of them. And I'm kind of going through that right now. I keep rewriting this, racist girl, because it's like, I don't want, after 2 words out of her mouth, you go, all right, somebody kill her. I've got to somehow make it feel like she believes this somehow, and it's part of her, because of the way she was raised and everything around. But it's not like she's an evil person. She's just adopted a very evil, judgmental, stubborn, side. And so it's that thing of trying to still have the audience go, I hope she changes her mind, but for some reason, I don't think she's going to. But, it's always, to me, how do you find the humanity in these characters? How do I do a father and son story about the DC sniper and the kid Malvo, who went out and just terrorized the world? Pretty much everybody was terrified about pumping gas or whatever, that they were going to be shot. But I went and said, no, I'm going to do a father and son love story. It's like, are you nuts? And I go, no, because why else would this be happening? There was, it's like OJ and the Passion killing. It's like, there's a reason behind this stuff, and they believe they're right, and that's the scary thing, that psychopath mentality.
Another thing with this movie I wanted to mention is fucking Alice Cooper, man. How'd that come about? Our boy, Alice Cooper.
One of the best things I ever saw in a review was that, this is the rock and roll Jason. And I love that, being, an old rock and roller. And I've always tried to put rock music in any of the movies I've done. Usually it's because I can't, because of rights, how much it would cost. It's like, no, get some library, needle drop stuff in there. So if I had to do that, I would try to find songs that really were from some band that was not well known, but it sounded like a real band, or it sounded like a real song that's like, I know that, don't I?
Yeah.
So when we got to this one, I just happened to put in, a couple of Alice songs. And part of that was because back in the 60s, Um, we were on the same bill. I knew him as Vincent. He was a guy from Texas. He had a band called the Naz. We hung out at Frank Zappa's log cabin in Laurel Canyon, talked a little bit, not a whole lot, but later on, I heard, that's Alice Cooper. Who? Alice Cooper. How do you get that? Oh, Frank Zappa gave him that name. Really? Which again, to this day, I don't know if it's true or not, but anyway, there was a whole kind of connection with Frank and Alice early on. And then the music, I thought, well, God, this is great. And he's doing the kind of show I wanted to do. In the 60s, I was blowing shit up on stage. I was throwing myself in the audience. I was cutting myself. I was doing all this stuff. And he was able to do it in the grand, old fashion, big and incredible. So, I was like, this is great. I would love to have him be part of this. And then the executive, Frank Mancuso Jr., said, you an Alice fan? And I go, yeah. And he goes, what about if you wrote a song for this? I go, are you fucking kidding? He goes, no. Record label came to us and said that, they need to do something now with the career. They've got to, shift it. And his manager feels the same way. And so that's kind of how that happened. And the first version that he turned in was a much harder rock version, which I loved. And I said, that's it, that's great. And I was like, no, the company thinks it's got to sound a little more 80s. We got to get some synth in there, and so that, I've come to like it. But at the time I was like, can't we just have the hard rock version? Like, no. But, once that happened, I said, is there any chance of getting some more of his songs? Like which ones? Hard Rock Summer would be great. Teenage Frankenstein would be great. It's like, let's see. Yep, worked out. So, that's how that happened.
So good too, because Teenage Frankenstein, a movie, with young kids and basically a bolt of lightning that brings back a monster. Like, it's so fitting. But yeah, I love that. That was like Alice Cooper right before he came back with Trash. And once Trash hit in '89, like I feel like he got his career back on track for sure. Real quick here, you filmed 3 endings for this, which I didn't know. Which one of the 3 is your favorite?
Of the what? I'm sorry.
Which one of the 3 endings? You filmed 3 endings for this movie.
What? Yeah. Boy, that's a great question. I guess the one that's in the movie.
Okay.
The others are gone. No, I mean, the only thing that Frank Jr. asked me when I turned in the treatment and the first screenplay is, he goes, we really fucked up on part 5. When the audience saw that it could be Tommy Jarvis being Jason, they didn't like that. They were really upset that it wasn't Jason, somebody impersonating him. So on this one, we have got to tell, however you want to bring him back, I don't care. We just bring back Jason and, let's give them, a Friday, and whatever else you want to do, it's up to you. So I wrote this thing and I thought, well, we've not seen his father. And I thought his father would be sort of like, in my mind, almost like Raymar. I mean, he was this just evil persona of evil, Svengali-esque, long hair, dark, basically raped, Mrs. Voorhees. So the person that they thought was Jason's father isn't really, it's this guy. And which I actually put in the Friday the 13th, the game, in the Pamela Voorhees tapes. If you get all those Easter eggs, you'll hear this backstory of mine about who the real father actually is. It's not Elias. It's this guy, the man without a name. So I was really hoping to be able to put that in there. And then also, when he's staring down at the 2 graves, he senses Jason's not there. And then it cuts to the lake and, we start moving in and then we see him underwater and his eye opens. So again, telling the audience, it ain't over, he's there. But Frank said, if we dangle this carrot, if they think that next time it's going to be a show about Jason and his pop, no, this has got to be, Jason, pure and simple. We need to take the father, element out. So it made it into the little book, the little signet book, has, that scene in there. And now I found the script that has it. So at a lot of the conventions, I have that, for sale if anybody wants to see, how it was, before we shot it. But then I got approached by these guys in Oregon that were doing Vengeance, and they wanted to do the Jason father story and asked if I was okay with it. And then said CJ was going to be playing the father. And I went, wow, that's great. And
So cool.
hey, would you like to play the caretaker?
Yeah.
And I said, hell, sure. You know,
Yeah.
it's like, well, we'll send you a plane ticket. We don't have any money to pay anybody. I go, that's cool.
Yeah,
You know, I'd love to be a part
And your
of it.
band had a couple of songs in it too, right?
Yeah, that's been happening too with the band. I sort of dropped the ball on the band question because basically, we all split. Everybody went a different direction. Some guys still played music, but obviously I went into movies and stuff. And then in 2011, a private detective gets a hold of me and says, you know, we're looking to find the surviving members of the Sloths.
Wow.
And I was like, yeah. And turns out the guitarist, the lawyer, hired this, you know, private detective because somebody contacted him and said, weren't you in a band called the Sloths? And he goes, yeah, why? And that there's a record called Making Love. He said, yeah, we made like a little 45. It just sold on eBay for $6,650. And he was like, what? And there was all these like, low end, horror, not horror, rock and roll, cult rock and roll kinds of magazines and what do they call them, zines, whatever the rock zines or something, where they just kind of print their own stuff and things.
Yeah, zines. Yep.
Great guy has Ugly Things magazine. I don't know if you've ever seen that that's out, and they all wanted to interview whoever was still alive, and two of the guys had passed on. The rest of us suddenly get together and not seen each other in 45 years. I had not sung in 45 years or played the harmonica.
Wow.
We did these interviews, and then I said, just for the fuck of it, why don't we get together? And because the drummer had a set of drums because his son was a drummer in his garage. So we started going right back to the garage where we started, played the songs that were the cover songs that we did that were in our set in 65, 66. And then out of just kind of a crazy notion, it's like, what if we play live? And it's like, oh, people are going to boo it. And I go, that'll be funny. It'll be great. Be a great story. So we go down to San Diego thinking we're going to hide, not thinking about these. And people tape, when we were there in 2011, and it kind of went out and we started getting these bookings. One thing led to another. Burger Records picked us up. We were like, they're, the grandfathers of punk and garage rock guys. And, here's a bunch of guys all in their 60s doing music from the 60s. And I found this passion that I didn't even have in the, in the 60s of getting up there and just killing myself on stage. Both, literally and figuratively, with knife effects into my chest and blood coming down. And, I put in the magic stuff from my childhood, mime stuff from the period where I was doing that. So I tried to make it as much of a show as possible. So we went to South by Southwest like 5 years in a row and, did an album, came out on vinyl. Did
Back
a bunch
from the
of,
grave.
Videos. And then our songs started ending up in all these like independent horror movies. The Fanboy 13's got one of the songs in it that Deborah Voorhees has got coming out at some point. We did the Amityville Murders.
Yes. Because
we live.
We live right by, like I live two towns away from Amityville. So I was like looking that up. Yeah.
Oh, do you?
Yeah. So the Amityville Murders for sure. It was written by Daniel Ferens, who wrote Halloween 6. Yeah. So very cool. Yeah. Back from the grave. I've been listening to that record. It's fucking great. I can't believe what a great story. Like this has been like one of my favorite episodes just because your fucking story is amazing. Langan, do you have anything that you wanted to add or anyone?
Yeah, well, we're not over yet. We're in need of a guitarist because our guitarist unfortunately moved to Philadelphia during the pandemic. So, we've already got like a booking, and a couple of ones actually coming up to do, but it's like, we're far from over. When I realized, boy, I have a long way to go vocally, because all my stuff was very raspy and stuff, and people go, oh yeah, you're like an Alice Cooper guy, and I go, I don't mean to be. That's just the way my voice comes out. And then at a certain point, I, tear open my shirt. It's like, oh, you're Iggy Pop. I said, I've never even seen Iggy Pop live, but it's like all these things you start to get compared. And I thought, no, I want to just keep going and see if we can actually create our own thing. Pandemic obviously stopped us, stopped the tour, stopped the next record. But now we're, as things are starting to loosen up, as I said, we got to find a guitarist, and we want to keep going, see where the hell it goes. And it's like rock till we drop, and I just don't see any reason to stop. I've been doing vocal classes now twice a week for 7 years now, so I can somehow get a range,
Me too.
and do, it's like I thought I love to sing, and if you can't do it live, at least let's try Stairway to Heaven. You kidding? No, I know I could never do it. Let's see if I can do it. Let's do Roy Orbison's Crying. Really? Yeah. Let's so it's like you start to find things that you actually can do. You find the right key, and when you got a head voice, it doesn't have to all be grinding away on your chords. So it's been a wonderful be a student again of an art.
Yeah, you got to find the right key. That's what I learned.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I mean, listen, I think we're pretty much good on the episode. I don't know if anyone had any other questions, right? No? Yes?
Well, I know you have as a souvenir the tombstone and casket from Friday, right? Is that common knowledge? Is there any, are you like big and do you take other things from like other films? Is there any other like
I had the
souvenirs?
I had the angel wings and her gown from Date with an Angel. Over here, I've got the arrow from Prophecy that was punched into the monster's eye. I mean that little prop. The tombstone and the coffin were sort of the big things, because both of those, I mean, it's a real tombstone. I mean, this thing takes 3 people to carry it. I mean, it is solid granite, and dragging it from home to home over the years has been fun. And the coffin, which is below me here in the basement, I just kind of have it there when people come down the basement. It's like, holy shit, what's that? It's Jason's coffin. Who? Jason, And if I don't end up selling it, or the Academy of Motion Pictures Arts and Sciences wanted both of those things, and I thought, you know what? Fuck me and having it in my backyard, in my basement. Let the fans see it. Let's put it in there. Guillermo del Toro, contacted me and said, I know you have these things if you would like to donate them and stuff. And I went, okay, well, unfortunately, I was just starting a divorce, and the other lawyer of my ex-wife said, nothing's leaving. Nope, can't do that. And by the time the divorce proceedings was over a couple of years later, called the motion picture, and they go, we've got more stuff than we can handle. If you want to give it to us, we'll probably just, have to hold on to it for a few years and then figure out what to do with it. I went, no, I don't want it sitting in a vault. I'd rather have it where I could show people or, use it for interviews or something. So yeah, I still have it, and maybe I'll get buried in it. I don't know.
Yes.
If I keep it that long.
Well, Tommy, hopefully I'm not coming in broken up. All right. I'm good. All right. You can hear me?
Yeah.
You're right. Yep.
Yeah. Thank you so much for doing it. I know that I hate bothering people, but when I reached out to you, you were super cool. So thank you for taking the time to just talk movies and music with us. I really appreciate it.
It's an honor.
I love you guys. I mean, that you care and you love these things. And to me, it's like, I don't get to talk to people where we have the same minds about stuff, the same influences and things. So it's always great, fun for me. And to talk about The Exorcist or talk about, Hendrix or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, if you don't know that, if you're not out of the music world or stuff, it's sort of people go, yeah, I remember him sort of, But, like to have Doors stories and some of these things where people go, you're bullshitting. I go, no, it's absolutely true. I mean, but at the time, you're not thinking about that. You're just going, yeah, well, this is kind of what your life is.
Well, as soon as Friday the 13th, Part 6, Part 2 comes out, or Black Veils, anytime you want to come back, we'd love to have you to talk whatever if you have nothing to promote, if you have something to promote, if you want to talk about your favorite Doors album, or we just did a Van Halen episode too, so you're welcome anytime. So
great.
Thank you.
That was Eddie's.
Thank you.
was devastating for me because
Devast-
we were very close for like 2 years, and
Oh.
it just I had no idea he was that far along. You know that I knew he. I was there when he had the cancer and the tongue cancer and all these other things and the knee surgery and stuff. But he was such a fighter and such a great guy. I just when that news hit me, I was in a funk for 3 days. I could not pull myself out. But
Yeah.
everything you've heard about Eddie being a great guy, triple it. I mean, he was really, and the fact he's like greatest guitarist ever. I mean, but just as a person, he was just so sweet, so wonderful.
What is the best Van Halen record?
Man, I have so many favorites and things. Today on what was I on Facebook or on something, and Ann Wilson from Heart.
Yep.
Was doing the thing, and she said, when she met Eddie, he had never played in an acoustic guitar because he didn't have one, and she gave him one, and then he came back and he wrote this thing, and she
Spanish
goes,
Fly.
I still remember it, and she plays this thing, and I go, that's pure Eddie. I mean, and I never heard that before, obviously. So those little moments, when those happen, you go, God, he really was so special, as an artist and as a person.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I don't want to take up more of your time, but like I said,
Yes.
anytime you want to come back, you're welcome. Thank you so much for
Thank you so
talking to
much.
us.
Thank you.
It was an
Thank
honor.
you so much, guys. Appreciate it.
I'll see all 4 of you, or all 3 of you later.
All right.
Right.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.